Shalom, and welcome to Lasting Legends of the Bible. My name is Mike Toplitz, and together we're going to open up the pages of the Scripture and take a look at the legends and the midrashes that have developed over the centuries by the rabbis and by the sages to help explain some of the things that we read inside of the Bible. It'll be a fascinating journey as we travel through the Bible, learning the legends and seeing how people around Yeshua's time understood the Hebrew Holy Scriptures. You will find this a fascinating journey as we go through the pages of the Bible. Thanks for joining me. Shalom, and welcome to another episode of Lasting Legends. We're going to come together today to look at the flood story and the legends behind the flood. Now, of course, you could go to the book of Genesis and read about the flood. What we're going to do is try to fill in some of the gaps that are in the Bible and to give it some color and some imagery, because that's what the legends do. You know, God had told Noah, as we talked about in the previous episode, to go and build an ark, and Noah had raised the trees and properly cut them and got the ark put together. And then God said to Noah, take all kinds of food and put it in the ark, and then take 7 pairs of animals, of clean animals with him, and also 1 pair of all the unclean animals. Noah said to God that he did not know how to gather the animals. How were they going to come to see him? So God directed several angels to gather together the animals, the 7 pairs and the single pairs, and bring them to Noah so that he would have them on the ark. What's interesting is Og, the king of Bashan, which really meant king of the giants, he came to Noah and begged him that he could get on the ark, that he did not want to perish. And Noah first thought that being a giant, now if you remember the last episode, we did talk about the fall of the angels and the giants, called the Nephilim, that certainly he would have survived a flood. Well, that meant God had to create a flood a lot higher than 9 or 10 or so feet. But Og insisted that he be part of the ark. So Noah said to him, swear to me that you will deal kindly with my children. When Og swore this, Noah permitted him to sit on one of the logs that were projecting out of the ship. Noah made a hole in the door of the ark so that he could give Og some food and water every day. Now, God had Noah close the door of the ark, and of course we know the rains came. And what God did was he removed 2 of the stars from the Great Dipper that you see in the northern sky, and that left 2 giant openings in heaven, and the water then from heaven came down upon the earth. Remember, in ancient cosmology, it was believed that there was a layer of water over the earth because when you looked up, it was a blue sky up there. And that's what they thought. He also caused the great ocean. It was believed that there was an ocean underneath the earth because if you dug into the earth, you'd hit water. Sometimes you hit rock, that's the foundational stones. But if you hit water, well, that must be a big river under the earth. So God then brought the waters up from under the ground through these openings and created all kinds of current, and the waters rushed in. So you had the rain from above and you also had the rain from below. About 700,000 men and women gathered around the ark as the flood started to happen. And the mighty ones, they were called, the large people, like some of the giants, not Og, because he's on the boat, but the other giants, put their large feet on the foundations of the deep, where the water was gushing in from underneath, in an effort to try to stop them. Weaker people took their children and threw them into the depths of the abyss, hoping that the children would sink and go into the fountains of the water that was gushing up. Sounds pretty cruel. Again, desperate times. And God saw the cruelty of the parents and what they were doing to their children. And he rained down fire upon the parents, killing them so that they could not do this to their children, even though the flood was going to take care of everyone anyway. So a bunch of the men ran to the ark, and they attempted to force the door open so that they could get into the ark and be with Noah. But their feet got scorched because God sent fire down to protect the ark. And they couldn't reach it because their feet were on fire. Then what God did was he sent lions against men, because even though Noah closed the ark door, even though there was fire around it, there were still men trying to break into the ark. So God sent the lions to stop them. I always wondered how the ark was lit at night, and during this cloudy time, there were no windows, there was just the one door. And Noah was given a precious stone, it's called, that would illuminate the night. So Noah was able to distinguish between the day and the night because this stone only illuminated during the night. During the day, the sun may not have broken through the clouds, but you know, when it's a rainy day, the difference between day and the difference between night. After a time when the rains had stopped, Noah then sent forth a dove. But she couldn't find a resting place. Therefore, there was no dry land, and she returned to the ark. 7 days then passed, and again he sent the dove out of the ark. And again, the dove flew out. The legend says that the dove flew over the land of Israel, the promised land. And God opened the gates of Eden for the dove. And the dove saw wonderful trees and fruit trees and all kinds of delicious fruits. But nowhere, no dry land yet. But then the dove saw the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And the water had receded there. And the dove was able to pick up a leaf, an olive leaf, and bring it back to Noah, thereby telling him that there was dry land. So God then said to Noah, it's time to leave the ark, for the waters had receded enough for him to get out and repopulate the world. So Noah stepped out of the ark, and he began to weep bitterly at the sight of the destruction that the flood had given. Houses torn down, trees destroyed. It probably looked like the south of the United States when a hurricane came through. And then Noah got out of the ark, his family, the animals, and he started to till the ground, and he planted a vine. It was a grapevine. It was one that Adam had taken out of the Garden of Eden when he was driven out. So this is a sacred vine. It also tells you why wine becomes a sacred drink, since it's created from fruit from the sacred vine from the Garden of Eden. And while he was engaged in this work, the legend says that Noah was approached by Satan himself. Why would Satan approach him is a good question we'll have to look at. And Noah found out that when he drank the wine that he produced from his fruit, it's sacred wine when you consume a little bit. But if you consume too much of it, it will cause evil, it will cause destruction. If he drank 1 cup of the wine, he felt as strong as a lion. If he had 2 cups of wine, he resembled the pig that wallows in the mud. And if he drinks 3 or more cups, he got drunk. And if he drank more than that, the legend says he would act like a monkey, dancing, singing, and knowing not what he is doing. So that's a warning to those of you who like to drink a little too much wine. This concludes the legend, which of course goes with the story of the flood and of the time of Noah. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this legend, and I feel blessed that you have taken the time to be with me to hear the legend. God bless you, and shalom. Shalom, and welcome to the Q&A, question and answer section of Lasting Legends. This is episode number 6 about Noah and the flood. And an interesting question is, at the beginning I mentioned that Og, king of the giants, wanted to survive, and Noah let him ride on one of the beams that extended out of the ark. Question is, what's the significance of that? And I think that it's important the legend says that, because in the book of Chronicles, it tells us that Goliath, remember the giant who David fought, was a descendant of the Nephilim. So if the flood comes, or when, I should say, not if, when the flood came and killed all of the giants, then there would not have been a descendant of the Nephilim for David to fight. Now, what I thought was interesting about it is the legend says Og was on one of the branches, or one of the, I shouldn't say branches, one of the beams that stuck out. And if you put a giant on one end of that boat and all the weight that he had, he would have tipped the boat over. So I wondered, and the legend doesn't say this, but this is speculation on my part, how did he counterbalance the boat? Now, not only counterbalance the boat, but when dry land came and everyone got off the boat, who's Og going to mate with to continue the Nephilim so that Goliath is there to fight David? So I wondered if on the other side of the boat, to counterbalance it, Og's queen, his mate, would have been on that side of the boat. Legend doesn't say that, but it does raise that interesting question, because the boat would not have been able to handle the weight of one giant. Then I had a question about when Noah sent out the dove. And the question is, why the dove? What significance is the dove? And perhaps the significance of the dove is that dove generally is a metaphor or symbol for peace. And when the flood was over and the waters had receded, the earth would have known peace. It didn't last long, but it still would have had that time of peace. Doves were probably one of the 7 pairs of animals that were taken, because doves were used in sacrifices. And if you don't have 7 pairs of the unclean, and you make a sacrifice of the 1 pair, that means you've destroyed the species. So maybe the dove had something to do that tell us that peace had finally come to the world. It is a shame that it didn't last. Now, what is the significance of the leaf which grew in the Mount of Olives? It was it was an olive branch, and that's what the dove picked up That's what told Noah there was dry land, and then of course he had to wait for God to tell him it was time to leave. Olive branches are another symbol of peace, symbol of restoration, and the world was made anew, even though when Noah got out he saw how much damage was done. You really were starting the world anew, a whole new generation of mankind. We also learn in the legend, and I may not have mentioned, I don't think I did, is Satan offers to help Noah when he comes out of the ark, and he's putting that grapevine, he's putting it in the ground, he's planting it. Satan decides to come by and pay a visit. And it's kind of intriguing to ask the question of why. And in the legend, and let me add this part to the legend, that Satan brought a lamb, a lion, a pig, and a monkey. Remember I told you about drinking wine and what it makes you feel like. And Satan killed each of them and let the blood flow of each of those animals under the vine. So actually this is part of the legend. And it was to let us know that when we do get drunk on even sacred wine, if we allow that to happen, that Satan can now influence us. Evil can now influence us. So wine is, and of course that's alcohol, is interesting that it's considered a sacred drink because it is of the vine that Adam took from the Garden of Eden. And 1 cup is fine. 2 cups, okay. But once you get past the 2 cups, it's Satan that's going to have an influence on you. You will lose self-control. And I think that's what it was saying about the drinking of the cups and you acting like these different animals. It's because Satan was there trying really to trick Noah. Well, I hope you found this to be interesting. And I hope to see you next time on the next episode of Lasting Legends. The next one will be number 7, and it'll be about the Tower of Babel. And there's some pretty interesting things that are behind that legend. So, take care, God bless, and shalom.